Hello everyone, how are you doing today? I'm going to be doing another fun little recording, so probably not so fun. The subject itself is going to be a bit somber. Not the most fun thing in the world, but uh, thank you to those who choose to listen, regardless. Oh, and by the way, if there is some kind of improvement in the audio, I took the comments and used them to try to make some changes to hopefully things sound a little bit better now. I'm not entirely sure if they will, but you can comment below if they do sound a bit better. I was told that it sounded a bit like a little tinny or off the audio, a little jarring almost. But maybe this change might have repaired it. In any case, today I will be talking about the fun subject of schizoid related depression and, well, a little bit of anxiety too, but mostly we're going to talk about sadness. Which, doesn't really make for the most exciting recording, but whatever. We get sad sometimes, right? Even us, the ones that don't feel as much as maybe really empathetic people generally do, but no, we get pretty fucking sad. If there's anything a schizoid is pretty darn good at, is getting pretty sad or getting kind of angry. Angry and sad are my usual go-tos. Angry more than anything else. It's more productive, luckily. Sad, well, I can still be productive. It's just a little just quieter, and like to just keep to myself whenever that rises up. Guess kind of like some of the other ones, I might as well start with childhood. So, mostly kept to myself growing up. Didn't really feel all that bothered by my situation of, the inability to really connect with others or make friends too well. Well, and I didn't really understand what was wrong anyway. I kind of just thought people didn't like me, or I was weird or something. Got obviously bullied a lot in elementary school. That stopped once I hit my freshman year of high school. One, I got bigger, a lot bigger, and two, I got angrier. So once those two things kind of combined, any kind of bullying stopped. The reason it would occur to begin with is because of probably some of my personality disorders issues, which is, saying things without tact or not wanting to participate in things. When a kid tells you, oh, do this, do that, and they try to goad you into doing it. It just wouldn't work because I wouldn't care about the criticism. I wouldn't care about them telling me that I was being a chicken or I was being boring or any of that. And I think the fact that I wouldn't care would probably make me more of a target to people's dislike and so on. So I never got, I can't say never, but I rarely got bullied as far as like the traditional way of just some big kid fucking with me. That did happen in elementary school for a short while, but once I hit junior high, most of the bullying, or if you want to call it that, was generally kind of like from afar, like rumors being said about me, jokes being said behind my back. It's mostly like behind my back stuff, and then I would find out later. And I would usually not care all that much, but I think what would get me kind of sad was that because of, things that were said about me, he's weird, he doesn't talk, he's this, he likes weird stuff, he's always reading, he doesn't want to do anything, he's always at home, shit like that. Some of that, the only thing that would get to me was the fact that, I did I had some kind of interest in making some friendships, especially when I was younger, because I saw other people participating with them, in them, and they seemed kind of happy, and I also wanted to see what that was like. It wasn't until much later when I started actually trying to make more friends that I discovered, oh, this doesn't make me happy. But I had assumed, that it would, because I saw that other people were happy doing it. So that was a mistake I learned in high school. I generally did well in school, kept B's and A's and such. Most of junior high, going to high school, the ADD would kick in, procrastination would occur. I generally did not like doing a lot of my assigned work, but I do usually really well on the exams or tests and things like that. So, and more than making up for it, and I end up with a B most of the time, or B average for a while. I wouldn't say it was until high school, maybe sophomore year, that things started going downhill academically. Stopped caring. I think some of the, as I, past puberty and everything, some of the schizoid stuff kind of started setting in, started getting stronger. I became less interested in a lot of things. I did have a girlfriend in high school. That's going to be for another recording. That's an interesting story, that one. But, yeah, I was generally uninterested in anything that was interesting to most people at that age, teenagers. And because of that, I would always get really angry at people. And like I said, by this time there was no bullying or anything because my stature was formidable, and my attitude was hostile toward anyone that was even remotely hostile to me. And it wasn't like I would start, physically attacking anyone. I would just be an asshole or make fun of them or mock them. I regret some of those decisions now, obviously, but we all regret a little bit of the things we acted upon in those teenage years. But it was probably just mostly associated to some kind of defense mechanism, because I wanted to be left alone. I didn't need people telling me what to do or where to go. So I was generally isolated unless I was with a small group of people that were the kind of school weirdos to it themselves, and they suffered from all forms of issues. I know a couple of them tried to kill themselves. Other ones had one guy I know institutionalized for a while because of some other maybe similar reasons. And another one, strangely enough, had actually done it. But the weirdest part was that it was many, many, many years later, after those friendships had long ended. Strange now thinking about it, I was a weird kid. The masking was random. Sometimes I would pick it up, sometimes I would drop it. It was really difficult to keep up, especially, going through a lot of those changes, both physically and mentally, and, brain development wise in high school. So, it was just a variety of not knowing what I was and creating these personas that would, garner me some friendships. Not knowing my boundaries of like what's okay and not okay to say, what's nice and isn't nice to do and say, stuff like that. Nothing incredibly bad, but mostly like awkward or rude behavior, because I didn't quite understand how anyone else functioned, and I didn't even understand how I functioned, to be honest. So you can imagine how well that turns out for trying to build friendships and have conversations with people. And when I would go to events like a party or something, what would generally happen is I would be masking it up pretty hard the entire first hour or two. And then I would get exhausted and get really, really depressed. And I wouldn't really understand why. I would just want to isolate myself, and I would get incredibly sad about being there. And I'd want to be alone. And then I would just feel completely drained. And, this was high school, so I didn't quite understand what was going on. I wasn't seeing any kind of therapist or anything. My parents probably would have told me I would grow out of it or something ridiculous like that. That's the kind of thinking they had. But, yeah, it wasn't easy. It was an uphill battle most of the time. Cost me a lot of grades, all kinds of other issues. I eventually graduated. That's a funny story, too, on how that happened. So most of the depression I was suffering then was because I didn't know what the hell was going on. I didn't know what the fuck was happening, because I would have some friends, but then I'd be miserable when I would hang out with them too much. I had a girlfriend, but outside of the physical department. I wasn't really understanding what it was that I was doing emotionally. And that person had their own set of issues that, kind of made the relationship at the time work, in the sense that, it was two people with issues regarding social version. And because of that, the hobbies being similar, and because of that, it was easy to get along with the person. But, I didn't really understand what it was that I was feeling, which was not much. But I kept forcing myself to believe that this is what people do. They get a girlfriend in high school, and they, have fun, and they fall for each other, and all that kind of stuff. And, I was trying my own version of that, I guess, at the time. Some immature nonsense that I'd concocted in my brain before I even remotely understood what the hell it was that was going on with me. As I got older, started hitting my 20s, the depression got worse. A lot worse. Started getting more aggressive. I started not figuring out, but it started being my go-to to either destroy things or break things or punch things. My depression was very destructive. Never toward people usually or anything like that, but either myself or just objects. Like I just like to break things, break my things, hit things. And I would get really, really angry, but it was really, really sad. And and I couldn't really come to terms with what it was that I was sad about. And I would always have some new reason for what it was. I would try to pinpoint a reason, and I would generally kind of steer it toward something pretty conventional, like, oh, I was mad at this or this person or that, or because I'm lonely or something like that. And there is a sense, even with a schizoid, there is this weird kind of loneliness, but it's really different. I think it has more to do with the hardwiring we have biologically, like as human animals, and how we're social creatures. And there's something in our DNA that kind of drives us toward socializing. And when you're a schizoid, you don't want to socialize psychologically, but I feel like there's some kind of biological something there. There's something there in neurological, almost, in your brain that still craves some form of companionship. Never for me was like a large swath of friends or being popular or any of that nonsense. That never occurred to me. It was just having that one or two close friends. And then when I would develop them, they would generally fall apart for a variety of reasons. Either because I would say the wrong things, do the wrong things, or not be interested in partaking of their going out and having fun and things like that. I spent a lot of my 20s living in another state. Was doing a lot of drinking, stuff like that, partying, so on. Tried to fill that void for a long time, trying to have fun. That didn't do anything. It would just be the kind of same situation. You'd party, get drunk, you'd be hanging out, and about 2 to 3 hours into the event, you'd be drained and you'd be very depressed. Angry. In my case, too, very angry. Because I couldn't understand why I didn't want to be there. I couldn't understand why I could feel lonely, yet not want to be around anyone. And that conflicting, that paradox, would drive me up a fucking wall. It was hard. And I'm not sure if any of you PD peeps out there have experienced something similar, and I know there's some out there listening that are schizoid themselves. Maybe you can comment below how you had a similar conflict, or you didn't. You were lucky enough maybe not to have that conflict, and you dealt with your own demons. But mine was always that. It was always, I wanted companionship. but on my terms, and that's just not realistic. Which, my terms would be only speak to me when I feel like speaking, or only ask me to hang out when I feel like hanging out, which, obviously that's not a good friendship, but it would just get me in trouble all the time with any kind of new acquaintances I would make. I would say the wrong things. I would say insensitive stuff. I wouldn't remember what it was you should or shouldn't talk about around that person, or mention what was okay not to mention. A lot of those skills I developed through my 20s, and now I'm in my 30s. But in any case, that was the 20s, and there's just a lot of anger, and I think it was all that. It was this just sense of solitude, miserable solitude. But it was only kind of like random segments of my day. So most of the day I wouldn't care. I'd be playing video games or reading a book, and I'd be fine. But at times I did want companionship of some sort. And when I would attempt it, I then would regret it, or not understand why it was that I didn't want it anymore. Why it was so short-lived, the feeling of wanting companionship. I'm not talking necessarily like a girlfriend or anything like that. I'm talking more like just a close friend, because I never felt close to my own family members in any super significant way. Be awkward for them to hear that, right? But if anything, I'm a little closer now to... No, I'm not. I respect some of the people in my family for certain reasons, but outside of that, no, I just can never really connect. So, you had this weird conflict of seeking companionship of some kind, but not wanting it all the same. Because what the companionship that people were providing couldn't fall in line with my needs, my lack of emotional needs. I don't know how to put it. I'd be perfectly fine having a friend that just sits next to me and does whatever they want, and we occasionally speak. But I think at the time, I just didn't understand what was happening. So, I would cry myself to sleep and not understand why. I would break a wall or punch a hole in something, not understand why. I just understood that I was angry, and I was bitter, and I was sad, and that I hated everyone because they made me want some friendships. And, well, they didn't make me, but, I was like, I felt like I needed a friend, but I didn't want it the way they were all offering it. And so when I wouldn't take their friendship the way they were offering it, it would, like I said, fall apart. And then I would get angry because I didn't understand why what we had, which was, very distant, or very, they're distant, or what's the word I'm looking for? Not consistent, like, with the whole hanging out or talking and things like that. But that felt good enough for me. But other people did not agree or feel the same, so a lot of those friendships would end. Then obviously I would just get very, very sad, because it was always so short-lived because of that reason. So a lot of the depression, I think, at the time stemmed from some of that. As I got older and I started hitting my 30s, I, decided to go to school. If you listen to my academic angst recording, you'll learn how that went. Eventually graduated. And now, most of my depression now is pretty low grade, but it's consistent. It's always this kind of humming in the back of my mind. Could often, get distracted from it by either spending time with my actual close family, which is, my wife and my kids, or by, hanging out with the few friends, talking to the few friends I have. and doing my hobbies and reading books and, doing the things I enjoy. But it's always there. It's always this humming. Sometimes it grows, it crescendos at times, and hits me pretty hard. But then it flatlines again and just stays there. But it never truly goes away. It's always just there, watching, waiting. I'm not sure what it's waiting for, but it's there. I'm sure some of you have felt that hum in the back of your mind. For some of it, it's always a scream. For other people, like myself, it's always just this humming that's there, reminding me that, I won't attain the version of happiness that I guess people talk about. But what I'm also learning is that I'm trying to find a way to attain the version of happiness, or not so much happiness, because I see looking for joy as kind of a fruitless pursuit. I think joy is a side effect of finding meaning and purpose, regardless of what your philosophical beliefs are. And this is coming from a nihilist, but I'll go into that another time. But finding meaning and purpose of some kind. And it's like that hum tells me, no, you won't. You're not going to find it. You're going to live and you're going to die, never finding it. And I think any kind of depression I feel now is more having to do with that. It's not loneliness, because I have people in my life that I love and care for. But it's that meaninglessness. Regardless of how intrinsically devoid of meaning it actually is, but just that personal conquest. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that, regardless of your PD, or if you don't have one, or if you love someone that has one and you could see it in their eyes, that fear, that misery. It's always just there. And luckily, it stays pretty low most of the time. I'm very functional in that sense, but when it does spike, it's brutal. And it's its own kind of custom form of depression, because I feel like depression can often take different forms depending on your psychological profile, Depression might even feel completely different from one person to another, or make sense to that person only, or to people like that person. I think misery isn't so much shared. It's like its own compartment that we all have. Some of it a little more full than others, Interestingly enough, doing just these recordings, kind of seeing the comments and interacting via internet like this, it's making me feel pretty good, I have to say. I don't know why exactly, and I haven't quite figured out what it is that I'm enjoying about doing this, but it gives me like a little tinge of meaning, I guess. Like if that's what you want, if you can say that. And usually when I start something, I stick to it. Pretty consistent when it comes to that. Which is, from what I've been told, very rare and weird for a schizoid, but I guess I'm just that weirdo. Can't even be a schizoid right? Can't even do the SPD correctly. Because I've read some of the comments telling me like, oh, well, this matches up and that matches up, but this is weird. And I'm like, yeah, you're not the first person to kind of mention that. But I don't get it. I don't know why I have any kind of ambition, especially since everything feels for naught. But I think it's more of a stubbornness, more of a anger, a kind of fuck you feeling that drives me. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it anyway, regardless of how absurd it is. To keep going, to keep trying, to find some kind of sense of purpose, regardless of how insane it feels to do it. I think maybe I enjoy the insanity a little bit. Maybe. I don't know. I want to hear your stories, though. Your tales of woe, if you want. Not so much why or what caused it, but I'm curious to how depression feels to you. And, to anyone out there. Avoidants, schizoids, paranoids, the whole slew of people. What does your version of depression feel like? Not what triggers it, not what causes it, but what it feels like to you. Because for me, it's like a hum. It grows louder and louder, and then dies back down, but then it stays there. It's always there. And it kind of gives you this weird sense of fear. And I hate it because it makes me feel weak. And I don't like feeling weak. It makes me feel weak whenever it spikes. It makes me feel pathetic. Because in my mind, it's just irrational. It's ridiculous. What do I hope to achieve or accomplish with this feeling of failure, pathetic weakness? I hate it. It makes me angry. I think that's part of why I get so angry. Because I'm like, why the fuck do I have to feel this way? This is stupid. This isn't productive. This is a waste of fucking time. That's how I get. But it happens regardless. So, what can be done? But yeah, comment below. Tell me, your version. How you feel about your own depression, I guess, is a good way. How you define it. If you're not usually depressed, tell me how you feel seeing others go through it, someone you care about, or how you feel hearing someone talk about it, or them tell you about what it feels like. Does it leave you dumbfounded, confused? I'm wondering. Those outside the window perspectives. That's why I hate some of the definitions they have out there regarding SPD, because they say like utter indifference and almost like a stoicism. They almost describe the stoic indifference. No. Schizoids have feelings. They're just not the kind of feelings that most people conventionally understand, maybe, or cognizant of, but it's its own. It's like its own kind of palette of emotional confusion. Because, like I said, or maybe it's a combat that's occurring within our brains between biological needs, chemical reactions in the brain, and then psychological predispositions, maybe. I don't know. But you tell me, what do you think? What is this? So subscribe if you'd like, comment, like, all that kind of stuff. I want to keep this ship sailing, and I'm going to. So to anyone out there that thinks I'm going to stop all of a sudden, no, I'm not. Because I'm that fucking stubborn. I just keep going. Just keep pushing through the mud. Keep smashing through the doors. Whatever I need to do. Splinters in my fists. I don't give a fuck. I keep going. Don't know why. But I do. Thank you for listening. See you guys next time.